Hey, shalom, shalom. I want to start off by giving all praise to Yahweh, Ba'Shem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Recha HaKodash, double honor to our apostles / elders who rule well, which are GMS. All right. Blessed salutations to you brothers out there teaching and enduring truth and sincerity. Yeah. So I wanted to do a little quick hit lesson. I was just doing some studies just on health. My health in particular, and which I've been fairly decent on, man. I've been disciplined, compared to the past, and making proper adjustments. And I just start out, share things that that I've learned and or that I'm currently moving forward and doing. Okay, because that's one thing is that anybody can go on Google and look up things, and say what it is and not do it, And I could tell you from experience that a good diet changes a whole lot. There's a bunch of things that work, but a good diet, would change a lot. Okay, so it's a number of key factors that is important to health. There's a number of key factors that point to good health. There's a number of key factors, of course, that points to bad health. And one of the things is that's non-dietary is stress. Okay, so going into stress, there's a oxidative stress, which affects the kidneys. But if you really go down a rabbit hole of looking up what's healthy for your life and what's bad for your life, it all ultimately everything is very similar. There's little things here and there that that specifies toward. So I look up what is oxidative stress, so ChatGPT can better explain it than I can more fluently. Okay. So when you go into the word oxidative stress, all right, oxidative stress is what happens when your body has more damaged molecules, free radical, than it can handle. Its natural defenses, antioxidants. All right, and I'm sure some brothers know about antioxidants, but like I said, antioxidants go to really dark berries, blueberries, blackberries, strawberries, things of that nature. Amongst many other foods, olive oils and different levels of foods that help. Okay, but getting to it is that it says your body constantly produces free radicals during normal processes like breathing and energy production. Okay, which is normal. You also get them from outside sources: pollution, smoking, UV rays, processed foods. Okay, which is processed foods is really linked to trans fats. All right, trans fats. You got what they call it. I got it posted up in post production. Cis, which is the good fats. That's omegas, omega 9s, omega 3s. I believe omega 6s as well. Then you got saturated fats, which is your red meats. Okay. And if you're not, I know Jake don't have that type of time or interest level to go and look up everything. A good way to recognize, good fats from bad fats is when that meat is cold. You know what I'm saying? If you could see the fat on it, like steak has marbled up, that's how you can tell. All right. But, because the best red meat, you can eat is bison and venison. Motherfucker say kangaroo, but the kangaroo is unlawful, man. So don't eat no goddamn kangaroo. But bison and venison, bison and venison. Mainly venison is the best red meat to eat. Okay. Cow being the worst. You know what I'm saying? Steak being the worst. There's nothing wrong with eating it. It's just the amount that we eat in Babylon is unhealthy, on top of not moving around and burning that fat. Okay, but if you notice, if you cook saturated fat, if you cook trans fat, when it cools off, it coagulates and gets and turns into a solid. So that's a good indicator, in a base way. There's scientific terms and hydrogen and all that, and all that, trans. That's why they call it trans fat, because the hydrogen molecules are on the opposite sides, and then the good omegas, the hydrogen, is broken, but it's on one side, which causes to be more malleable, for lack of better words. And then saturated, is just an even bar, but both saturated and trans are stiff. But the trans fat, again, is processed foods like butters, canola oils, seed oils, refined sugar, the preservatives and additives have a lot of that. Okay, so these are fats that don't break down properly. Your body can break down saturated fat, but it's just as it is good, it is bad. It produces bad. It produces the HDL and LDLs. Okay, but the saturated fat, the trans fat, it's almost like a lab created type of fat, where your body is foreign to your body, so it's not. It's only going to produce the bad fat. Okay, and your body don't break it down properly how it's supposed to. And these things are linked to everything. It's really linked to everything. From what I noticed, once and I'm sure, Jake, that we're getting older up in age, and you start looking up things and getting healthy and what to eat, and you start noticing everything that's heart related is all connected to throughout the body, because ultimately your body or your blood carries everything. As the scriptures say, there's life in the blood. Okay, and as that's how your body carries that. So we're gonna get into precept. So a couple precepts to keep in mind. When you go into Sirach 38 and 38 and 4, Salakia, it says, "The Lord have created medicines out of the earth, and he that is wise will not abhor them." Okay, because often we get caught up into the lifestyle of Babylon and taking your Tylenols, you go to the doctor, and if your cholesterol is high, if you have any cardiovascular issues, they give you blood thinners and things like that. And instead of doing that, you can eat certain foods, live a certain lifestyle to to regulate that and make it way better. And it takes discipline, man, because your diet is the main form of your discipline. Speaking as a fighter, that's the hardest fucking thing to do, is to cut weight. And it's a testament to your discipline. And just speaking from my standpoint, my point of view of reasoning, is because there's no limit. You can't blame your lack of health on you not having workout equipment and things like that. When it comes to a diet, because we got money, we eat every day. And especially as adults, you can sit around and eat what you want, how you want, and you're going to want to flavor it and have that taste, and some people, as they say, you should eat to live instead of living to eat. I get it. Certain stuff tastes good, but you should have a consistent diet of health, so that way if you indulge in bullshit, to be frank about it, that it won't impact you. Your body can at least break it down, So, like I said, everything is connected. What I noticed, from inflammation to, Alzheimer's to diabetes to, anything cardiovascular. Again, I'm not a physician. I'm not a dietitian. Even though I'm, getting my nutritionist thing through my NASM and things like that. but that's a, I'm not here to give medical advice. I'm just, expressing, my interest in my health to the flock. If you know, you know, because we got to say our little prologue, so Esau don't shut things down, call it medical misinformation, because they ultimately want our people stuck in these hospitals. Okay, that's how they make their money. All right, but let's get this as well. We're gonna go into Proverbs 17 and 22. Okay, in Proverbs 17 and 22 it says, a merry heart doeth good like a medicine, but a broken spirit drieth up the bones. Okay, and that's pretty much a merry heart. It goes back to being in good spirits, not that's why it's good. I ain't saying we're in Babylon, we're in this bitter nation, so you don't want to compound stress. When you go to worrying about things that's outside of your control, you go to worrying about that's like the main thing, in my opinion, that is detrimental, because it's a dark cloud that'll forever hang over your head. Not handling your business. If you got things that you need to be tending to, then you need to get to it ASAP. Just handle it, get it out the way, and move on to the next. Yeah, we have to not be regulated emotionally. Stress is very important, man. Faith helps with stress. Especially with dealing with the unknown, uncontrollable variables. Hey, the Lord got you. And if you worry that the Lord ain't getting you, then you do right. You do right by him. If you figure that he ain't gonna help you, that means you ain't doing right. Because the Lord said, we fall into temptation, but the Lord will always provide a way. Okay, so stress. I get it. Babylon's bitter. They got a lot of things going on. I'm not saying to walk around a la-di-da spirit. But if, when you're young, you see a flamer. Yeah, you know what I'm speaking on. It used to make you mad, because what it says, knowledge increase with much bitterness. So at the same time, you're not gonna be passive or omit it. You just have to understand the Lord gonna destroy that person. If you feel like something should be done, then get your ass up and break the scriptures down to him. And if you see that that's redundant, then you just move along and let the Lord judge him. Okay? Well, you just do your job and then let the Lord do the rest and move along. And hey, speaking from experience, man, from people outside of truth, to even, when you're dealing with younger brothers, it's like, you try to get through to them. And I'm quite sure from that experience that the elders have to do the same thing when dealing with us, and there's more important matters than to be weighing down, as the scripture saying, being a busybody in other men's matters, and being a busybody, period, always off in this drama, that drama. You wonder why, our nation, because they're always in drama. All right, black culture is full of drama. You go on Zeus Network, that's black culture. And you see it's all fighting and alcohol, and this is by design, because they always try to push, hyper masculinity on the black woman, scientifically and everything. Started talking about, certain diseases from XY chromosomes, YY chromosomes, and women are hypersexual and men are hyper aggressive, and feed us with rap music and saturated fats and liquors. This is by design. And, you're dealing with a devil to say, well, hey, you took it. That ain't me taking these things. But they're pumping into your neighborhoods. Meanwhile, they got their whole food, their fresh times. They have their good foods, And when you're speaking about bad foods, you get a lot of, I never knew, the difference between farm raised and grass fed and things like that, until you start getting into those omegas and things like that, because the if you're fat, it's like a fat person, you may be big, but it's really all fat. You know, so when they be feeding these cows candy and bad foods and scraps, you know, they're full of fat. They're not lean. So that meat is inherently bad, even if it's good meat. You know what I'm saying? If you're feeding that, you know, anything, a bad diet is gonna come through the fat of that animal. You know, I did a lesson on that a while ago, showing the difference between, even though it's pork, we're not supposed to eat pork, but they had a display of lean pork and then fatty pork, and you could see the meat ratio, and it was horrible. Okay, but this is going into our system. You know, unless you're cutting the fat out, you know, that's one thing. But you know, Jake don't. You know, my old school parents used to cut the fat out. You know, they'll take the chicken and lift up the skin, cut some fat off, things of that nature. You know, but Jake probably don't even wash their meat. Jake normally wash their meat, man. You know, they got all kind of film on there. They got red dyes in meat, you know, on different things they inject. You know, so it's hard to avoid everything. But in essence, you know, you will want to get that fat off your meat. But the best red meat, you know, if you can't help yourself to eat, is, again, venison and then bison. Okay, those are two lean meats. And you can kind of tell by why those meats are good, because those are two animals that move around a lot. You know what I'm saying? Cows don't move around that much, you know. But if they're grass-fed, it's a better meat. Again, saturated fats are good and bad at the same time, okay? That's why your balanced diet should be more leafy greens and berries and stuff like that. And when you're eating, you should have a whole lot of more leafy greens and vegetables on your plate than you have of regular saturated fat, you know. But if you got, you know, trans fat, such as, omega-3s, I don't, you know, use that. I'm not familiar with that term, the cis fat and all that. I just, omega-3s, omega-6s, omega-9s, you know, but mainly omega-3s is your sardines, you know, your sardines and your salmon. You know, it's other ones that may be out there that I'm not familiar with, but for me, it's just sardines and salmon. Now, one may say, "Oh, that's boring, man. Get fucking disciplined. You didn't ate. You spent your whole life fucking your body up. You did enough." You know what I'm saying? Yo, like, Jake need to fucking grow up, man. Your ass ate enough hot sausage patties and hamburgers and fucking steak. You did enough. You did, like they had this one video and the girl said, "Oh, I might die," because she was fat, and the dude said, "Well, you ate enough. You're 7 years ahead of your time." You know, so same thing with being out of shape, man. We all done enough. All right, America then put us in a situation to where we eating triple the amount, you know what I'm saying, of what we supposed to be eating, and we've done enough. We messed ourselves up. Okay, so let's bring out some precepts, you know, because again, the medicine comes from the earth, man. All right, so in Sirach 38, all right, it said 38:4, it says, "The Lord hath created medicines out the earth, and he that is wise will not abhor them." All right, was not the water made sweet with wood, that the virtue thereof might be known? And he have given men skill, that he might be honored in his marvelous works. With such doth he heal men and take away the pains, because there's certain combinations of things that can help you. You know, there's dandelion root, there's, you know, like the wood, cinnamon. Like, I was just meditating, like, man, like, water goes into the earth, and all these plants do different things. Like, and the water goes into this wood and through the roots, and apples come out of there, but apples are sweet. But then you got avocados, same water, but it's just based off of the wood of the tree. That'll produce an apple or an avocado, or, you know, a soursop. You know what I'm saying? Like, these are the same things that's getting life and growing from the same source, but produces different tastes and variations. Garlic, all this is grown from the ground, you know, and it has different properties and different values, you know. But things in its natural state normally is what is is good for you, you know, because it's not foreign. You know what I'm saying? But when you got to become a scientist, like Skittles, you can't make, you know, Jake need to go watch some videos of these Europeans out here. They'll sit there and make, you know, all these products from scratch. They'll make Skittles from scratch, and they'll use tire rubber, boil it down with a component, take the molecules of the rubber out, and then, you know, put it into there. You know, the foam to make bread fluffy, and they'll do all these little things, and you'll be like, oh, hell no, man. You need to go sit down and watch them make gummy bears. Like from scratch. You need to sit there and watch them grind up pigs, squeeze out all the juice till it becomes a juice, and squeeze out the juice, and the juice gets poured out, and then they put the dye up in there and the sugar. And you'll be like, hell no. So I want to get this last quick precept, you know, going into Sirach 30 and 16. All right. It says, I'll start at 15. Sirach 30 and 15, it says, health and good estate of body are above all gold, and a strong body above infinite wealth. There is no riches above a sound body, and no joy above the joy of the heart. Yeah, you can sit here and think the food is like, because good food is a dopamine hit. It may bring you happiness, you know, but a good health is like, you know, being able to wake up, being able to move around and enjoy life, you know. And again, America's bitter, but that don't mean you wake up and you can't even walk up a flight of stairs. That don't mean that, you know, you just indulge in liquor all day, you know, to get away. You know, you got to learn how to deal with shit. Sometimes you have a long day. Sometimes you have a long day and you need a shot. Go drink your glass of wine. Sometimes you want to celebrate, you know, and you're with brothers. You could drink something, but again, it should be done in moderation. Okay? Some things need to be way more moderate than others. And drinking is one of them, man. You know, and brothers been on it, man. Like, we went out to, you know, visit brothers for the Pesach, man. And you know, normally we be buying bottles, just going. You know, we bought one bottle, and it was like, that bottle lasted days, you know. And Jake went on that, you know. Normally Jake get up and pour a glass of wine and start chopping it up and breaking bread. Man, we getting it up, we breaking bread in the gym, man. You know. So good health is not the priority, but it's something of significance, you know, and to be respected. So, because one could argue, well, you know, I'm going to trust in the Lord. Well, why are you tempting the Lord? Why are you sitting here getting your arteries clogged up because you can't get off a hamburger? You know what I'm saying? You sitting here eating the magic combo of death. Carcinic death. Hamburgers, deep fried potatoes, which is a carcinogen. Trans fat, and that Sprite that got the fizz, you know, oh, it's so bubbly. That's a combination of death, man. You know, crazy, messed up bread, fake meat, cheese, high fructose ketchup. That's a combination of death with sodium, you know, that white iodized salt. Deep fried and deep fried potatoes. Anytime I forget the degrees. I think it's like, let me look it up real quick. So when you go into what makes potatoes carcinogenic, And it says high temperatures cooking methods, specifically frying, roasting, and baking, turns potatoes into a potential carcinogen by producing a chemical called acrylamide. This occurs through the process known as Maillard reaction, where natural sugars and amino acids, asparagine, the potato react to the temperature over 120 degrees to 120 degrees Celsius and 248 Fahrenheit, forming a brown crust that contains high levels of acrylamide. And that's what when you know it's done, when you start seeing it brown. You know what I'm saying? So that and if you go into the dangers of a carcinogens, it's pretty much equivalent to a cigarette. Okay? And we got the unicorn for all this information. You know what I'm saying? Yeah, looking up folly ain't gonna cut it, man. You gotta have, well, it ain't nothing wrong with it. Just can't act like you don't got time to look up positivity and health and things that are good for you. Okay? Carcinogens are substances, agents, or organisms that cause cancer by damaging cellular DNA, causing mutations, or introducing chronic inflammation. Major dangers it include cancer of the lungs, liver, gastrointestinal tract, and skin. Common carcinogens include tobacco, UV radiation, processed meats, radon, and industrial chemicals like asbestos and benzene. It's just turning your ass nuclear. Like when you go into stuff that messes up your kidney filtration system, it goes into stuff like this. Like asbestos is what messes you up. A nuclear bomb messes you up. Stress messes you up. Alcohol messes you up. You are destroying it. It gets so bad it could destroy your DNA. It gets so bad. You know what I'm saying? Like, so eating and having a healthy mind is very, very vital. Very vital, man. A sound mind is very vital, man. Okay? So, to end it off, man, I want to speak on the positivity to it, and having a good meal plan, and it takes discipline. I get it. You driving around, you got money in your pocket, you can stop and get you some street tacos, you can stop and, get this thing and that thing, and you think, what is the matter? But you're doing way more harm than you are doing good to your body. That's the problem. All right, it's a false balance of health. Okay, so I was looking this up, and like I said, when you get into proper health, everything kind of circles around each other. Dark berries, like I said, you got certain things that are intricate, like dandelion root, cinnamon, burdock root, ashwagandha, things of that nature, But once you really see the similarities, it's all natural things. Turmeric, that's natural. Seasoned salt is not natural. It's a combination of things. And that combination of things, especially when you're getting it from the store, they use stuff to make sure that stuff don't pack together. So they'll put stuff in there. They put sawdust and cheese, If you're going to get you some cheese, get you some Parmigiano, okay? Some properly aged cheese, not rushed, okay? So they can hurry up and get it to you. You need to get that cheese that they set in them places, the wheels. You need to get the cheese that's connected to that, all right? You don't need to get no cheese that's, they pumping it out, Kraft, That's let me get that off. Let me get this off real quick, cheese. Different things like that. Cheeses are bad, but at least get you some Parmigiano, You know, like I said, the dark berries, kale, spinach. Okay, and if you notice, if you go into the liver, healthy things for your liver, healthy things for your heart, healthy things for your brain, it all circles back to the same foods. Same foods, man. Like I said, there are things that are particular. Like you looking for brain health and focus. You go lion's mane and all that, and but they're still from the earth. But at the end of the day, there's a base, okay, and a base is like the leafy greens, the spinach, the kale, broccoli, things like that, Brussels sprouts, you know, blueberries, cranberries, strawberries, for the antioxidants, oranges, lemons, grapefruits, garlic. Again, you can look all this up, healthy fats, avocados, olive oil, nuts, and all that, fatty fish, salmon, mackerel. They say mackerel, but we don't, anything with scales and fins you're supposed to eat, But the thing is, when you think about these fish, like salmon is a strong fish. And I don't mean by smell. I mean like them fish swim. They swim upstream. Tuna they have to keep swimming to stay alive. So the lifestyle of these animals will tell you how good they are in essence to eat. If they live a sedentary lifestyle, you know what I'm saying, then normally that meat's going to be bad. If they have a bad diet, then normally that meat's going to be bad. If they die the wrong way, that meat's going to be bad. You know what I'm saying? So these things you have to keep in respect. It makes it simple, So, you know what I'm saying? Jake should wake up in the morning and drink some lemon water. Filtrate your organs, man. That's that, oranges and lemons and things. That's the citric things to activate your organs properly. All right? When you eating breakfast, it shouldn't be no steak or, breakfast sandwiches and croissants and all that. You look, get some oatmeal, some berries, some honey. All right, you can get you a acai bowl for breakfast. Get you some nuts, some flax seeds, and have that for breakfast. Get your apple for a snack with some almonds. Like it's not hard. Get you a salad, put some chicken in it, some lean meat. Okay. Get you another snack, something dark chocolate. All right, and then when you cooking the chicken and the salmon, then you season it up with the essentials, not the shit that make they're so good. Putting fucking Joe's barbecue seasoning rub on it, tearing your ass up. Put some turmeric on your salmon with some cayenne pepper, with some black pepper, lightly sprinkled with some sea salt, pink Himalayan. Get your sweet potato with some asparagus or broccoli. Good to fucking go. And guess what? You can take that sweet potato, chop in half, sprinkle some cinnamon on that. Good food. You can't OD on that cinnamon though, because you got to filter certain things that are healthy for you. You got to cycle on and off. Okay, and cinnamon's one of them. All right, so you can sprinkle some honey on there. All right, you don't got to make no sweet potato pie, no yams. Just pouring hella sugar. No, sprinkle some honey on there. Sprinkle that, cinnamon on there. You're good to go. Okay. Don't Jake make asparagus. They damn near boil that shit to a loose noodle. Learn how to blanch your asparagus. Take some boiling water, set it in there for 30 seconds, take it out, drop it in a cold ice bath, and then you take you some olive oil and some garlic, lightly sprinkle it with some pink Himalayan. You good to go. You don't gotta fucking fry all your fucking nutrients out of shit just for flavor. You know what I'm saying? Don't live to eat, but eat to live. And wondering why, this weight just don't want to get off. My age, my what people say, this is genetics, or you could barely stand up on a highway, barely stay focused. Okay, waking up, falling asleep every 5 fucking seconds. You know what I'm saying? You ain't got no discipline, stressed out, chronic lower back pain. You know, these are things I've experienced, man. Babylon. At what point are you going to make an adjustment? Okay? At what point is prudence going to be used instead of observation and analyzing things? At what point? Ain't nothing wrong with analyzing, but you got to have some type of solution to it. Okay? Like, you got to have something. We're smart. We're men of the Lord. We're the creme de la creme. So why is prudence not a thing to be used? Okay? Why you waiting till your leg fall off and your arm fall off to say, let me eat healthy? That's not prudence. This is just common sense. You know? So, yeah, that's pretty much it. I just want to bring that out, man. You know, like I said, you know, a good meal plan. You wake up in the morning, get you some oatmeal, some blueberries, blackberries, you know, acai bowl. You know, then, you know, your lunch, you get you a salad, a chicken salad, no lean meat. Or you can, me personally, I do like sardines and crackers, you know. Give me some smoked sardines, some club crackers, you know what I'm saying, with a smoothie or a tea, you know, green teas, coffee without milk in it, with all that creamer and sugar in it, all right, just straight black coffee. If you, I need some energy, straight black coffee, but you need to be drinking some shit before you do that. You need to put stuff on your stomach, all right? Your body's a temple, right? You know what I'm saying? Jake want to get on people about smoking. Waking up in the morning eating fucking French fries is just as equivalent. Take care of your temple, you know? And I get it, it's hard. It's very difficult, man, because we've been doing this for over 30 years, some over 40, 50 years. That's a 50-year habit, and as long as you did it, you got to do twice as much to undo it. If you drink one 24-ounce of fucking Sprite, you're going to have to drink about a gallon to get that out your system. So how much more of years and years and years of doing this? You know? Now we're at where we at. This ain't about fighting to live. It's about being efficient so you can get the things done in your day-to-day. You know? You're all over the place. You can't think of things that you already could think of. Your discipline down, your testosterone, you're emotional. You got a fatty liver, so your emotions aren't regulated. This is the category I'm talking about. I ain't talking about living to be the 87. We hastening the day. What I'm talking about is being able to properly function within our lots. And a healthy diet helps with that. Good exercise, and you don't have to be putting on a Rocky movie, Rocky music, and running upstairs. All you need to do is go for a walk. Aerobics, stabilization, and then you can move to weights and stuff like that. All right? Being able to handle weight. All right? You can walk. If the walking get too easy, put your weight vest on. To what? Weight stabilization. And you walk around with that weight vest on. Okay? Or walk on inclines. Things like that. And then when you start getting that get too easy and you go to high impact, but that ain't necessary. You know what I'm saying? They ain't necessary. You bust your knees up and shit. But if you want to, you could go a high impact, go on runs and sprints and stuff like that. Things of that nature. Go join your CrossFit gym or something. You know? But yeah, I just wanted to share that, man. With that being said, I want to give all praises unto Yahweh, Bahashem, Yahushai, Bahashem, Racha HaKodash. Double honors to our apostles who are elders who rule well. Blessings and salutations to you brothers out there teaching and enduring truth and sincerity. Shalom.